And I mean, big aspirations, great. But what this administration is proposing is adding a tax to Americans who make that much money or more, so that that money can then go back into civic programming and government sponsored funds to then boost our economy.
Yes, yes. So basically, they're taxing the richer more so it can go back into the people who don't make that amount.
Correct.
Instead of taking the same amount of money from both, which really isn't fair.
Not fair.
But so they tax the richer more so it can affect everybody and not the same amount for everybody. So yeah, okay, that makes sense. Because
So, and that's why when it comes to conversations about taxes, not all of us need to be familiar with the nuances of taxes or even with how necessarily our taxes and accountants and tax season works. But I think having a general understanding of where the economy is right now, which a lot of us have a perspective on based on short, dense explanation that we just gave, plus where you get your money from and how that money goes back into the system is what you're really voting on when it comes to an economic plan proposed by a candidate. The other thing that I'll just throw in there is there, of course, are federal level taxes. So you pay money to go into the country at large so that it can go back into the country and government programming. And then there are state and local taxes. So based on the city you live in or the municipality you live in, within the state you live in, there could also be taxes. And those can go as directly to whether or not your road gets repaved, to whether there are funds for sponsored healthcare offices or suicide prevention hotlines or government resources for women who are starting businesses, just like you. So that can all depend on which candidate you are voting for, which ballot measure you're voting for.
And a lot of people always ask, can I control like where my taxes go? And sadly, we're not at that point. I hope we get to that point eventually.
Not yet.
But we don't get to choose yet. But there are, when I started paying my taxes and I got my first like tax, I don't even know what to call it, tax return.
Your return!
Thing. Yeah.
Money
like,
in the bank.
Yeah. Federal and state, what is this? And my mom had to sit down and explain like which one goes to where and like what can this help. And
it's confusing. It's really confusing.
Very confusing.
And I would say the baseline of what you need to know is by virtue of earning money in this capitalist democracy, you put money back into the capitalist democracy.
Yes. And then speaking of what we put in, we get back, I'm pretty sure you are very aware of a certain presidential candidate's returns came back and how he only paid $750, and a lot of people were very confused along with me. I was very confused on how that even happens because I'm 18. I've been paying taxes since I was 16 years old. I'm sitting here like, how did you pay not even a quarter of what I had to pay in taxes? So do you think you can kind of explain that? Because I am still kind of iffy on how that even happens. Because like I know there's returns, you can write off stuff and stuff like that, but it's still like, what?
Yeah, I know. It is really frustrating.
Yeah.
I actually went off on my Insta stories about this when that, I don't know if you saw that.
Yes.
But, and that's, to clarify for everyone, that's not on Outvote stories. But when Trump was elected to office, he was the first president to ever not release his tax returns. And he filed tax returns in two capacities. One capacity was for his businesses and the other was for personal taxes. And if you are an independent business owner, you have the capacity to file for both because businesses file for taxes too. Now, the New York Times and a lot of journalists for the last handful of years have been trying to get to the bottom of what is on these tax returns that the American people can't see, that every president before has released. And of course, shady stuff. No one's surprised.
Yeah, because if there wasn't anything suspicious on there, he wouldn't just have
He
not
put it out.
went it out. Yeah.
Exactly. Exactly. And so the tax returns ended up revealing, or at least the business tax returns ended up revealing what we already know, which is that this president is no businessman. I think a lot of people were duped previously into believing that because this president inherited a whole ton of money from the family and a business that he then run into the ground financially,
Yes.
that he was a big international businessman and knew what he was doing with money.
Yes.
And the truth of the matter
Guilty, because
is
I was finessed
that's
into that
okay.
idea too.
That's totally okay. And
Yeah.
there are a lot of really intelligent narratives that I will give this administration credit for when it comes to sharing the sort of false history of Trump's business acumen.
Right.
And I also recognize that there is an enticing appeal about somebody who has a big, visible international name when it comes to business enterprise. So we can get to that maybe in another chat.
Yeah.
But basically, what it all comes down to is we knew that Trump and his companies had filed for bankruptcy on many occasions. We were suspicious that, and by we, I mean like the general people who were privy to what was going on,
Right.
were suspicious that there might be tax evasion. And we also knew that there was more than one line of income for this president because he had appearances on reality TV shows. He owned different lines of businesses. There was family money, stuff like that. So what the obtained tax returns from, I think it was about 20 years, ended up revealing is that there was a loophole in the way people can file for taxes. Remember before when I said if you're an independent business owner, you can pay taxes retroactively on the income you get versus having your employer pay taxes for you. So there is a loophole where if you are a business owner and you're at a deficit, so you spent more money that year than you earned, then there are ways for you to write off your losses so that the government can't tax based on what you lost.